Hello everyone, this is my reaction to last Thursday's Star Citizen Live Tech Talk. I will not sugarcoat this. If you want to have it sugarcoated, go to the Star Citizen Shield channels that get free stuff from CIG. 4.8.x is in a very terrible state. Well, Star Citizen never was stable, never ran nicely, but in last months the game is at a very low point. This whole Star Citizen Live Tech Talk feels like someone wants to generate pity. Jared doesn't even sit on his usual desk. Instead, they were sitting together and everyone looked so sad. Seriously, why should we feel pity for a game studio in year 14 with more than $1 billion in funding that cannot even do the bare minimum basics? Like having checks, like making sure the code is on a good foundation, like teams talking to each other, like leadership. All those things are still missing. Chris and CIG's top management are not up for the task. How can you have so much time and so much money and deliver so little? Not even elevators work reliably. And we have some minor details that the flight model in year 14 is still not finished. I really don't know what to say anymore. The flight model is such an important part of a game, it should be nailed down in year 2 or 3. So many things depend on it, so much balancing. Let's go into my reaction. As always, I will only talk about things I find important.
482. We just put 482 out yesterday. I've got you. We're live.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, it started with an attempt at a bug fix a month ago. So with this 4.8 release and the way we've been doing patches this year, we have 2 streams when we work off from the working set. We have a base stream that we use for the base release, so 4.8.0, and we have a hotfix stream where we bring all the continuous changes along. So there was an attempt at bug fixing something on the Idris that was actually creating some performance issue somewhere else that was checked into that stream and nobody saw it, and it went through. So we've been on the hotfix stream now for 4.8.1, now going to 4.8.2. In 4.8.2 we went back to the base stream, which are supposed to be at parity at this point, except additional content, because we've added additional content in the patch. That change was included. And so what's supposed to be a routine update became a massive, wide-sprawling issue because basically the Idris was no longer compatible with its persisted copy.
To say it mildly, CIG was never very good at separating builds. One of the issues with the current 4.8.x build is Idris is not compatible with it. Why does CIG never check anything? We are not talking about a small studio just starting. I find this unbelievable. This game studio is running like a school project. Where is the leadership?
And so what that would do is players have in their ASOP terminal, they have a version of the Idris that's from 4.8.1. This change, which was not supposed to be in the stream at all, gets in there. And so now the game server is expecting another shape for this. The game server has a series of checks and balances for this, but he's the last banker in the chain. And so for him, if the schema is incompatible, he's like, there's data corruption risk, I'm out.
The game server has a series of checks and balances. Why aren't the same checks and balances used before you put something into live? For example, an Idris build? I really don't know what to say anymore. I'm saying for years by now that CIG's leadership is absolutely amateurish, absolutely incompetent. And now Benoît even admits this on a live stream.
A completely unrelated check-in to the Idris.
Yes.
Somehow made it through validation or missed validation.
Correct.
It's like this. Got in, and now the server, which is still built, the persistence records, which are still built on 481
Yes.
and expecting a 481 version of the chip.
Also 480 because
480.
they're compatible.
Really? Okay. So it's expecting a 480 version of the chip, got a 482 version of the chip without knowing that there was supposed to be a difference, and just went, all right, I'm gonna head out.
No, Jared, there are no validations, there are no checks and balances before CRG puts something onto live. There is no way to sugarcoat this.
Yeah, and so every time an Idris would be attempted to spawn, that server in that region would crash, and then restart, and then try to load the Idris again, and then crash again. If somebody was wearing the VGL flight suit and referred to these entity classes that were actually representing, I think, the nozzle and the front pack of the suit, then the game server would crash. And so we had, again, to do percussive maintenance to remove those items and fix that. And so that highlights to me a massive issue with how we validate check-ins and how we get changes in the game across persistence until we have full forward porting compatibility on the persistence layer, which we don't have at the moment.
Again, no check-ins, no good validation. I know I sound like a broken record, but how is this possible for a $1 billion game project in year 14? Someone clearly hasn't worked on the basics. I'm not blaming Benoît. This is an issue of the very few people on top.
Where the data management is super, super strict. And obviously now we invalidating them twice in a row. So.
Data management is super, super strict. No, if you have 2 fuck-ups in a row, Idris and a flight suit with invisible hands, you don't have a good data structure. You don't have good checks.
In the last year and a half, we have tripled the amount of content that we've put out compared to 2024, compared to 2023, 2022, all combined. Like the amount of content we have put out in the last 18 months is amazing.
I really don't like how Jared is gaslighting people. CRG, you didn't put out a lot of content. Yes, there were some new missions. But those missions for the most part are boring and repetitive. People are doing it a few times to get the blueprints and then they move on. And many of those missions quite often don't work reliably because this game has still major issues with their servers. Even after we got the first iteration of server meshing in January 2025. In addition, the older missions we put into the game recently are already broken. Try doing Vendor Smuggler in 4.8. Warehouse, broken. Try to do contested zones. Nope, broken too.
And the people here are working their asses off to make it as good as possible. I don't doubt the intentions of any human being here. I don't doubt the dedication of anybody here. We're not here today to apologize for anything. I know that we're all working as hard, except Steve. We're all working as hard as possible. But why does this happen? Why is this happening?
I know this is a live stream, you don't want to lose your job, Jared, but it's pretty much obvious why this happens. I'm sure CRG has a lot of hardworking devs, QA people, artists and coders who want to make the best game possible, but they are let down by the leadership. Again, this isn't a small studio just starting. This is an over $1 billion project in year 14, led by amateurs.
The weapon and the pricing and everything for the weapon was validated by one team, in one silo, if you will.
Yes.
And then the validation of the crafting and the breakdown and stuff was done in a different one.
Sure.
And there wasn't something that...
Transversal to check all of that.
This is also an issue, once again, about leadership. Different teams within CRG don't talk to each other. Heck, they are fighting over ownership of projects. This is not a healthy environment to make a game that is so ambitious, so huge, as Star Citizen is.
I'm working on the game, I'm going to add a new gun, and I'm going to price it this, and I'm going to make it super powerful, right? Well, that would flag.
Zach.
I could not, I could not check that in, right? The system would go, wait, you need some authorization before you can check this in because of these reasons. Which currently we don't have something like this. That's cross-checking, right? We need this yesterday. Like,
Well, I'm aware we need it yesterday.
yeah.
But
No, we're working on this right now. Like, to get all these checks and balances in place. Like, I don't know if it will be like a 4.9 kind of thing, but it's happening now.
If Star Citizen would have a decent top leadership, this would have happened 10 years ago.
why isn't just throwing more QA at this the answer? Why isn't this just hire 500 more QA people?
Jared, you are fantastic. You are a clown. You should ask your boss. Chris has laid off most of CRG's QA people in 2024.
But also what's frustrating with this situation is that, we've done multiple patches where this just worked fine.
This is a terrible argument, Benoît. You're talking like someone who's falling out of a skyscraper. He goes by, floor 20. Hey, I'm still fine. He goes by, floor 10. Hey, I'm still fine. Yeah.
We've been putting out a new piece of content every 2 weeks since the beginning of this year.
Please, Jared, stop lying to us. This is not true. Yes, we got a lot more missions in the last 1.5 years, but most of those older missions are already broken. And we never got new content every 2 weeks. Where is this even coming from?
Benoît, I put you on the hook to write a big old write-up on desync, and I know it's being worked on. I've seen the draft and whatnot. It's being worked on between every other initiative. Time spent writing is time spent not actually fixing things and making processes better. And
also, we got a couple guest stars in it that I'm hoping will make a difference too.
So that's still underway. That's still underway, and it's more like it's when we're done with it, it's going to be more like one of those. It's not a design brief. That's not the right thing, but kind of like what you saw with the gameplay guide. We're going to break it down, and I promise you, it'll be the most educated thing that you'll ever see from a game studio on what it is and what it isn't and what causes it and what doesn't cause it and stuff like that.
And the particularities of our game architecture.
Yeah.
Also.
Well, this means the desync article Jared asked for Benoît more than 3 months ago is still coming. I don't expect it soon.
Desync for the last several patches. It starts out small and it gets bigger.
Again, Jared, why the gaslighting? Is this meant for investors to watch? We have desyncs in a game since forever. In the old days, it wasn't too bad. Then CRG increased player cap to 50, later to 100 players, and desyncs have gotten way worse. Then in 3.18 we got PS, persistent entity streaming, and desyncs went through the roof. In 4.0 we got the first generation of server meshing, static server meshing, with a much higher player cap, up to 800 players on one server shard. And since then, desyncs are absolutely terrible. But now Jared pretends, oh, this only started a few patches ago. Please, stop telling things that are not true, Jared.
What do we know is causing it at this point? What are we doing to resolve it?
We don't have a handle just yet about what is actually causing it. We do have performance captures, and we're tracking at least 6 to 8 very specific optimizations that need to happen. One of them is within the area component, which is used all over the engine. Area and zone component, they kind of go hand in hand, but because we're pushing more content, right? The hierarchy trees of the game world is much bigger. So there's more areas, more zones, more subdivision, more. There are some areas of that where if you add a lot of entities in those that enter or exit these areas, there's, the engine provides the listeners to track entities entering areas or leaving areas or zones changing, right? And obviously there's concurrency constructs around this to prevent one thread from accessing another thread, right? And so just keeping it simple without diving too much into the low level, which we will probably in some of our desync areas. But there's lock contention in the area component at the moment. In some places, there's lock contention in some areas of the game. When I literally mean area, like, if there's many entities in this spot because of the way it's configured, we're seeing basically FPS drops in those areas. And so we're tracking about, like I said, 6 to 8 major optimizations that we're trying to get in our hotfix channel, right, to try to get this FPS back up to the spec that we want, which is above 20, across the
server FPS.
Server FPS, correct.
Translation: with CRG we are monitoring a lot of parameters, but we still have no idea how to fix this. This will take time. This might be impossible with this old and ancient engine and with CRG's terrible code. Maybe CRG has to rewrite the netcode from the start.
Is this related to the ship cleanup or lack thereof?
That's one of those things that we're looking at, is how aggressive or not the ship cleanup is actually happening. That's one of the things we're looking at. Yes. I
mean, because you can watch a Twitch stream or look at an issue council report, and you'll see. I want to say dozens and dozens, but I feel like it's even more. Yeah. Bricked ships everywhere, because with the insurance changes and whatnot. Sure. Bricking these ships.
Thanks for the clarification. So Chris Love for PS, persistent entity streaming is part of the problem.
And also have the entire system be persistent. So if you drop a Coke can in a forest somewhere and walk away, that Coke can is remembered, the state of the universe is remembered, so unless someone comes and takes it, it will still be there if you came back even in a month's time or whatever.
We have outposts with dozens and dozens of bricked ships, and we cannot even move them. If you try to move them, you are getting a crime stat. We cannot use an Argo SRV to move them away, and we cannot salvage them. Why not clean this mess up, especially if it has a negative effect on server FPS?
Is this viably part of what it is? Is this
in part? Yeah, that for sure doesn't help, because the more entities are replicated, the more the server needs to do every frame, and so that contributes to this. So yes.
It feels very nice to be finally validated. Too many entities, servers have to keep track, and database have to store. All because Chris wants to find his Coke bottle he threw into the woods 4 weeks earlier. I never said that PS is the cause of all the trouble. No. But doing more aggressive cleanup and not caring about the Coke bottle someone threw into the woods would help. Yes, PES, persistent entity streaming, if it would work perfectly without any negative impact, would be fantastic. But Chris never seems to ask himself, why does no other multiplayer game do this? The answer obviously is because it puts too much strain on servers and on databases. Chris, players are not interested to find the Coke bottles they threw into the woods 4 weeks earlier. Players are interested to have a game with acceptable interaction delays, acceptable do things with good performance.
Which is the amount of registered entities that have either MFDs or the flight system active.
Entities that specifically have MFDs?
Yes.
So it's an excessive number of MFDs.
Yes. Yeah.
Why isn't MFD so?
Well, we don't know specifically. I bet that if I went into that area and I looked, there would be a bunch of MFDs that are somehow visible. So that's been these components have a visibility aspect to it, where if you look at it, it's going to replicate for you, but if you don't look at it, it doesn't. Might be a malfunction with that. We're not sure.
Right. So the ship is breaking, but the MFDs are still visible.
Yeah, it could be like broken ship MFDs.
Benoît was talking about issues for low server FPS and for do things, and one of the issues seems to be MFDs, even on broken ships that are still on. If a player looks into this bricked ship, he can see the MFDs. I want to make this very clear. I'm not saying that CRG has no clue, is incompetent, don't know what they are doing, but we are in year 14. This is a game project with more than $1 billion in funding, and it seems like Chris Love, for cool cinematic, for eye candy, for look, you can see the MFD even of a broken ship, is a big part of the problems Star Citizen has performance-wise. Once again, it feels like Chris wants to do everything no other game studio ever did, but Chris never asks himself, why does no other game studio do this? Maybe because it's very bad for performance in a multiplayer game.
We're transforming the game from one model to the MMO model, right? And that means scaling systems. When we say that, we really mean transforming those systems to be service powered, right? So instead of being all in the game server and it's all good, right? We transfer these things to be service powered, right?
So the server no longer has to run transit. The server no longer has to run.
In part, right? It could be transit, it could be other things, right? Like for example, missions had a part of the mission system needed to be pulled out of there to be able to have server meshed missions, for example, right? So there's a lot of work behind that to basically dissect some services and move them to some game systems and move them to services.
Benoît, June 2026, we are transforming the game from one model to the MMO model. I thought Star Citizen was always supposed to be an MMO, and now in year 14 you are starting to transform the game to an MMO. How far away is 1.0 really? 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years?
Interacting from the game client with services that are on cloud infrastructure is kind of a different discipline than being a gameplay programmer doing a gameplay feature, right? Let's say I'm working on the main character, the actor in the actor team, like Jens, for example, and I'm doing a feature around that. But my world is kind of self-contained to the actor. If I'm also doing the replication side of this, which typically our gameplay programmers do both, but I know about the replication side of things, but that's the bubble. It doesn't exist, that bubble, right? When you talk about cloud infrastructure, cloud services, that you need to invoke, service APIs to do something, whether it's inventory service, right? Whether it's reputation systems, whether it's friend service, social systems, whatever. That's a different type of programming that tends to always be based in what, for the layman's is asynchronous programming. So not all C++ gameplay programmers are well versed in the asynchronous aspects. More and more today, but it's still always a little bit of a jump.
When CRG bought Turbulent, Benoît was made CTO 3 years ago. From what Benoît tells us, I get a strong impression before Benoît was made CTO, Chief Technology Officer, no one at CRG really worked on the MMO part of the game. And now in year 14, CRG finally starts to work on the MMO aspect of the game.
I just always appreciate anytime somebody comes on this show and is willing to roll those dice, because there will be people, there are already people in the chat now, there will be people on YouTube, there will be people on Reddit and like this who will take the things said here today and weaponize them. And that's fine. It happens. It's always going to happen. It'll never stop happening. But it doesn't stop you from coming here and being as candid as you are, and I really appreciate that.
Okay, Jared, criticizing a game project in year 14 with more than $1 billion in funding, when not even the basics of good coding practice are done, is now calling it weaponizing. I don't hate Chris, I have a photo with Chris. I don't hate Star Citizen. I still want Star Citizen to become a fantastic game and a huge success. But please accept that I have no confidence in Chris and CRG's top management anymore. This does not feel like a game project in year 14. Once again, this feels like here we have a few people, they want to make a game, they are just brainstorming. Jared, there will be a time when this fails, and I consider a minimum effort 1.0 with just 5-star systems with missing basics, missing mechanics, almost no physics, no alien worlds, no NPC crews, a failure, and even this is years away. When this fails, people will remember that you were part of this, that you, Jared, were still gaslighting people, even in year 14. I hope you will never ever get a job in gaming anymore. And for those who say CRG will continue to work on the game even after the bare minimum 1.0 releases. Maybe, but this would depend on money still coming in, and I'm not so sure this will happen after people see the bare minimum 1.0.
In Forward, we did run into some issues for some players. So there's a subset of players that ended up being shard locked. In this case, it was because of an infrastructure failure. The problem that some characters ran into is that some players are not very patient with the system when they go back to the main menu. And so they would go back to main menu and see, oh, your character's still in the shard, right? Or they would kill the client. Sometimes they do that. Kill the client, come back in, and then, oh, your character's still in the shard. I'm shard locked. Character repair. Well, the character repair in that case is the one that would cause the problem, where now the player would never get stowed because the repair would try to repair your character. And anyway, there's a bug there that made it so that now your character cannot be stowed. And so these players were shard locked. Some others ran into another condition. It was a fairly small subset of players overall that got in that situation, but it took us a while to identify the root cause. That fix been deployed. But I just wanted to mention that shard lock in and of itself isn't a bad thing. It's what enables us to have the flexibility to bring you into another shard kind of transparently, but we need to wait for the process to finish on your current shard before we can move you up.
Blaming the player for being impatient and causing a shard lock is not a good look, Benoît. A good system in MMO avoids this. If you have a game where shard lock can happen, you need to provide tools for players and for CIG to fix this issue. We had something to deal with it, character reset. But CIG took it away 3 years ago and replaced it with character repair, but character repair doesn't do much most of the time, and in this case, shard lock, character repair even makes it worse.
Right. Now we've put in place, we are in the process of putting in place active monitoring for players that get unstowed in shard and stay there for a long period of time so that we can attempt self-corrective actions if we run into that condition again, so that this way we don't need to chase the actual source. We can actually get some self-healing in place. But I just wanted to touch on what shard lock is and why it's kind of normal, and that it's better to be a little bit patient with it than to jump to character repair right away.
We want to, we are working on, we are planning to, we are in the process to implement something. Yeah, good old CIG. And why shouldn't players use the only tool we still have, character repair? What does it mean to be a bit more patient? Waiting half an hour, waiting an hour, waiting a day? This just doesn't look good, Benoît.
I mean, there are a lot more players, that's for sure.
There are a lot more players. There are so many more players now than there was a year ago.
Jared was talking for minutes how many more players you now have, comparing 2026 to 2024 in percent. This is nice, but how about telling us how many players actually log on daily on average, not just increases in percent? For some strange reasons, CIG doesn't reveal a number of daily active users.
Freight elevator is not working and displaying an overload error, preventing cargo pickup.
Benoît was presenting a list of bugs where people are actively working on fixing them right now. What I don't understand is, Benoît said last year in Star Citizen Live that the transport system, ATC elevators, are old and not compatible with server meshing. Well, this was an excuse because we have issues with those systems long before we got server meshing in January 2025. Benoît said very clearly the transport system has to be written completely new. How far along is this? CIG didn't mention this. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye. Auf Wiedersehen.
How much was it, Tom? Oh, thank you. Oh, this was $2.99. That's for me and the crew. How much we appreciate it.
Right.
Just remember
you
that.
guys are great.
You people.
Hey, you're still here. You might want to join me on Twitter or on Blue Sky.